Hello, hello, hello. Good morning and welcome to yet another episode of the Unspoken Rules podcast. I'm your host. My name is Sebastian, aka Rabbit, and per usual, I am joined by Mr. Blake Spillers. How are we doing today, brother?
I'm doing great on this fine morning. How about yourself?
Great. Cannot complain. Thank you for asking. Unfortunately, obviously, Montana has work this morning and will not be able to show up today. But I am very excited to get into this show. First things first, obviously, we'll be breaking down the Suns Clippers game 6, ultimately, where big congratulations to the new champions of the Western Conference, the Phoenix Suns. They get the job done. Second, some quick and hot topics that I just want to talk briefly about and just see your take on. Third, we will obviously be previewing the Hawks-Bucks series and how we think the rest of the way will play out, especially with at least tonight not having Giannis. And then we will close out the show with our debate topic of the day. Which playoff series has been the most fun to watch and why? Now, as we get into this first topic of the day, Suns take care of business on the road in Staples Center yet again and go on and become the first team in NBA history to close out multiple series on the road in the same building. Obviously, the first round being against the Los Angeles Lakers, and now the Los Angeles Clippers. Just a little fact to toss in there that we'll see how your take is. Moving on, obviously the Suns won 130 to 103. Let's just check on some key performances from those squads. So Jay Crowder ultimately had 19 points, went 6 for 11 from the field in 33 minutes with 5 rebounds. Mikal Bridges, solid 9 points. You know what I'm saying? Did his thing. DeAndre Ayton, 16 points, 8 for 10 shooting. Do I have some stats for you about him? And 17 rebounds. Obviously, Devin Booker, 22 points, 10 for 26 shooting, 4 assists, 7 rebounds in 42 minutes. And of course, the GOAT himself, Mr. Conversation, Mr. CP3, 41 points on 16 for 24 shooting, 8 assists, and 4 rebounds. Now let's move on to the Clippers really quick with Marcus Morris carrying the load and carrying that team. 26 points, 9 rebounds, 9 for 17 shooting. Pat Bev, do we have some things to talk about? His freaking Buford. But 11 points, 4 for 7 shooting, 3 assists. Reggie Jackson, love the man. 13 points, 4 for 12 shooting. Paul George, man, disappeared, but it is what it is. I bet we'll talk about it. 21 points, 9 rebounds, 6 for 15 shooting, 1 for 6 from the three-point line. And, of course, Mr. Boogie Cousins, 14 minutes, 12 points, 1 rebound. Blake, your thoughts?
Yeah, first off, I'm going to mention the incident with Patrick Beverley off the top because that was so uncalled for. I know Chris Paul had said something to him, but those two had been trash talking all series. For him to lose his frustration like that and just for him to do something so stupid and to risk an injury. Yes, I know he just pushed him in the back, but it's still stupid. It's still unnecessary. It didn't need to be done. The game was over. Obviously, Patrick Beverley was in his feelings, but for how Patrick Beverley plays, for the trash he talks, the kind of defense he plays, I don't think it's like I can't see him doing that. I don't know why he would do that. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, why risk doing anything to Chris Paul? Why? Because they beat you in 6 at home? Are you serious? Are you that mad? Are you that in your feelings that you have to really take it out of the control? And I mean, it wasn't a basketball. I mean, that right there, just wasn't about basketball. I just don't understand why Patrick Beverley would do that. And I think honestly, if this game would have been if this would have been going to 7 and like this would have been a different series, he would have been suspended, no doubt. I mean, for a play like that, I'm expecting the league to come out and fine him today, honestly, because that was so unnecessary. I mean, for what we have seen in the playoffs, getting considered flagrant 1 fouls, that right there, would have been a flagrant 2. And I think it should have resulted in at least a fine. I think at least a fine should be the minimum. But getting back into the game, the Suns came out and controlled the game from the first quarter all the way until the final buzzer rang. They showed that they were clearly the better team and that without Kawhi, the Clippers really didn't have enough firepower to win the series. But I do have to give the credit to the entire Clippers team because after losing their best players, they played their hearts out. I mean, they went out, they beat the Jazz, who had the best record in the league, and then they were able to push the Suns, who have been probably the most consistent team in the playoffs, 6 games in the Western Conference Finals. So my hat goes off to them. And I think that honestly, that this playoff showed that if Kawhi potentially leaves the Clippers in the offseason, that this team has enough firepower and weapons that they can compete and be a playoff team without him. But back to the game from last night. Chris freaking Paul, bro. He went crazy last night. I mean, dropping 41 points and just coming out with the mindset that guess what? He wasn't going to let his team lose. You could tell that this just meant more to him than it did to the rest of the players on the court. He wanted to go to the finals for the first time in his career. And I mean, by the way the Eastern Conference Finals is looking, the Suns will be easily favored against either team. With Giannis being injured and most likely out for the remainder of the playoffs, and the Hawks having a banged up Trae Young, it is looking more and more likely that Chris Paul is just on his way to his first championship ever. And I hope he gets it because out of any player in the league that doesn't have a ring yet, Chris Paul is probably most deserving of it. But back to the Clippers. I mean, Marcus Morris had a good game. Reggie Jackson played all right. I mean, the rest of their role players played all right. But Paul George just did not show up. I mean, when they needed him most, Paul George sold the bag. He didn't play well. He only had 21 points. He didn't shoot the ball particularly well. And the Suns were just doing everything they wanted offensively. They just exposed the Clippers last night. The last couple games, we've seen the Clippers playing very intense with a lot of energy. Their defense was great. They were forcing tough shots for the Suns. But last night, the Suns were just way too much for them. The Clippers couldn't get a stop defensively. They couldn't get anything rolling offensively. I mean, when your best player is not scoring the ball, not shooting the ball, well, I mean, what do you expect? Paul George needed to come out and score at least 30 to give the Clippers a chance. And he just came out and just did not play well. And honestly, it wasn't what I was expecting. I thought after the last couple games, I thought Paul George was going to come out, have another great game, give the Clippers a chance to win, and he just did not. He played poorly, and it showed. They lost by 20-plus points last night. They lost, I believe, every single quarter. They gave up over 30 points in every quarter. I mean, that's just a joke. To give up 30-plus points in one quarter, okay, it happens. The team gets hot. But to allow that to happen from first through the fourth quarter, that just can't happen. And they lost for a reason. That's all I'm going to say, Sebastian.
No, 100%. I just have first of all, a huge shout out to the Suns on a well-rounded game. Such an impressive postseason run that they're having right now. Second, credit to the Clippers, outstanding effort and fight to try and do all they could without Kawhi Leonard. I mean, at that point, they got much love and respect from me. I know I bashed them a lot or whatever the case may be. But moving on, I dug up some stats yesterday that I really want to break down really quick before I, discuss my opinion on the game. And I kind of just want to see your take. So first of all, DeAndre Ayton has a 50% field goal percentage in each of his first 15 career playoff games, which is the longest streak to start a playoff career in the shot clock era. Now, it's the second longest streak in a single postseason all time, trailing Shaq in the 2006 playoffs. Your thoughts?
First off, do you know how many games Shaq got in a row that year?
Yeah, 18.
18. Okay, sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, sorry, 18.
He's most likely going to break that record with, I mean, how it is. I mean, the next series at least has to go 4 games, so you would expect him to at least shoot 50% for the next 4 games. But yeah, huge shout out to DeAndre Ayton. I mean, he's going to go out there. He's not going to force bad shots. He's going to work his game in, and he's looking for good shots. He's not looking for bad shots. He's not going to, like I said, he's not forcing shots. He's a rebounding machine, and he's a perfect fit for Chris Paul and Devin Booker. I mean, if I'm DeAndre Ayton, I'm loving the position I'm in because not only do I have one of the best scorers in the league, I've got arguably the best point guard in the league in terms of passing, and it should work so perfectly for his game because DeAndre Ayton can either get off in the pick and roll and get easy baskets in the lane, or he doesn't even have to move half the time because guess what? Chris Paul is moving that offense to where he's getting him open shots. Devin Booker is forcing double team after double team to where DeAndre Ayton has easy oops every other play. Like, I love DeAndre Ayton. I think he does. I mean, in that draft class, he does not get talked about enough because you obviously have players like Luka Doncic and Trae Young who take over the conversation. But we're forgetting that he was a clear number 1 for a reason in that draft class. I mean, before his year in college, Luka Doncic was a lot of people's number 1 picks. DeAndre Ayton came out, dominated college, was the number one pick. I think it was unanimous. I think almost any team who had the number one pick would have taken him. And I think it's shown. He's consistently played well since his rookie year. And now he's shown out in the playoffs. He's shown out in the biggest moments. He's making it seem like the playoffs are just another ordinary game for him. He's a double-double machine. And I think hats go off to him because he's about to break Shaq's record.
No, 100%. I'm glad that you mentioned the GOAT, Mr. Chris Paul. Now, I got 4 stats to talk about from just last night's performance alone. Do you want me to tell you all 4 stats and then you give your take, or do you want to go one by one?
No, go ahead and give all 4.
All right. So first of all, Chris Paul finishes with 41 points, tying his playoff career high. It's the second most in a playoff game by a player at the age of 36 or older in NBA history. Karl Malone obviously scored 50 in 2000 against the Supersonics. That's number 1. Number 2, Chris Paul scored 31 points in the second half, his most in a half in his career, regular season or playoffs combined. He's the 3rd player over the last 25 postseasons to score 30 points in the second half of a series clinching win, joining the wonderful company of Steph Curry and Anthony Davis. Number 3, Chris Paul is the first player in the shot clock era since 1955 to score 35 points and hit 2/3 of his field goal attempts in multiple series clinching wins in the same postseason. He's done it in each of the Suns' last 2 series. And then the last and final one, which I think you might be a little bit upset about, but it is what it is. After dropping 37 in the series clincher against Denver and 41 last night, he became the oldest player in the postseason history with 35 points in consecutive closeout games within a postseason. The previous oldest, of course, the GOAT himself, Mr. Michael Jordan, at the age of 33. Your takes?
Wow. Well, honestly, just hats off to Chris Paul for what he's done in this playoffs. Not even just this series, but like you said, every series he is seemingly coming clutch after clutch. I remember in the Lakers series, the one game he was banged up and not playing, they lost. He comes back. He was rusty at the start, but then he starts hitting clutch shot after clutch shot, and he carried that through every single playoff series. And that's not something you always see from someone his age, and especially since Chris Paul has gotten a lot of unwarranted hate throughout his career about him not being able to put up in the playoffs, him being a choker, him never making the finals in his career. But guess what? He shut up all the haters this year. I came into the playoffs not expecting the Suns to make it to the finals. I thought that they had a chance to get there for sure, but I wanted Chris Paul to get there because, like I said earlier, he is the most deserving player to win a ring that still hasn't won one in the league so far. And I hope he gets it. I really do. I hope he finishes it off in the finals because those stats just show he's not messing around. He's coming for blood. He wants the clutch shots. I don't think there's anyone in the league right now that can guard Chris Paul in that clutch time. I don't care about your defensive player of the year. I don't care about the best guard defenders. He's proven it against the Clippers. He's proven it against the Nuggets. He proved it against the Lakers. He can go out there in the fourth quarter and knock down clutch shot after clutch shot. It doesn't matter if there's a hand in his face or not. And guess what? If he starts getting double teamed, you know Chris Paul's going to make the right play. You know he's going to make the right pass. I think Chris Paul is one of the best guards in the league, not only today, but of all time. And I think after this playoff run, people are going to start arguing that he's a top 10 point guard in NBA history. And I think he deserves to be up there. And I think he deserves all of this credit that he's probably starting to get. He had a lot, like I said, he had a lot of haters before this playoff series. And guess what? Twitter's gone quiet on Chris Paul's name. Twitter has gone quiet on his name. So I think, honestly, shout out to him for having such a great playoff series, and I hope he can finish it off in the finals.
All right, I got one more take for you, and then I'll give my opinion, obviously, on this game. The Suns had just a .302 winning percentage, if you want to do the actual percentage, whatever we can. But in the previous 5 seasons entering this one, not only are they going to the NBA Finals, but that is the worst percentage in 5 seasons leading up to any appearance in the final postseason round in the history of sports, NBA, NFL, NHL, or MLB. Your thoughts?
I mean, I think that just shows the impact that Chris Paul has on a team. I saw a picture about a week or two ago, and it showed like teams win percentage before Chris Paul and then teams win percentage when Chris Paul joined their team. It's crazy. Every team statistically gets better. There was only one instance where their team had a worse record, and it's when he joined the Thunder. But that's not really fair to discuss because before he joined the Thunder, they had Paul George, Russell Westbrook. They had a good team. That team was expected to go to the finals. Then when they traded all of their pieces away, even after Chris Paul joined, they had, I think it was like a 0.3%, like literally one of the lowest percentage chance to make the playoffs. I think their wins were like somewhere around like 30 something for the season. And I'm pretty sure they clinched that in the first half of that season. I mean, Chris Paul, wherever he goes, he knows how to win. He knows how to get other players around him to play the best of their abilities. And he's shown it. Because guess what? This Suns roster, even though it was very great, it did not have the most talent in the West. It didn't have the most talent in the East. But guess what? They're showing that it really doesn't matter. They're showing that if you play your role and if you know how to play good team basketball, you can win games in the regular season and you can do it in the playoffs as well. And I think Chris Paul is just showing that not only is he one of the best point guards in the league, but he's just one of the best players in the league. There's a reason he was in the MVP talk this year, even though his stats don't jump out at you. It's because he does things that the stats don't show. He wins games. And I think that's all that matters in the league today. You go out there and you make your team win games. And that's what Chris Paul does best.
No, 100%. I agree with everything you said. Now let me start breaking this down. First things first, PG disappeared. All right. He had a prolific game 5, went crazy, but to bounce off of that game and to have such a sluggish and poor game, shooting 6 for 15, 1 for 6 from 3, and 4 turnovers, I'm not going to hate on the man. At the end of the day, he played 735 minutes, up to that point. It's absolutely insane. The closest person to him was Devin Booker with 647. And so at the end, it's unfortunate, to see his body language just come out the gate. And it just really looked like he was done. Like he had literally nothing else left in the tank. And it just sucks to see because it would have been nice to go game 7. It would have been nice to really see them boys battle it out. Now moving on, I got so much love and respect for Reggie Jackson. I know last show I apologized for the slander, especially about that interview talking about how basically the Clippers really saved him. But after seeing him really break down and get emotional and legitimately talk about it on camera, man, props to him. He had an amazing postseason run. It obviously sucks that it has to end like that. But, big congrats to him for real, because this money that he's about to get this summer is going to be well-deserved. He proved that he's got the love and the fight to compete in this league and be one of those greats, to provide and help a team. Patrick Beverley, I got absolutely no respect for him. The dude's a pansy. The dude needs to just get out this league at this point. Join Kuzma, join all these Bufords up in China, go leave. Like I have absolutely, you're down 20 or whatever the case may be at that point. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, the man should be suspended. The man should get fined, whatever the case may be. It's just utterly disrespectful, pathetic. He should be just ashamed of himself. When it comes down to the supporting cast, though, for the Clippers, there's nothing much else you can get from them. It was really just a sluggish performance from PG and Reggie Jackson. And at that point, it is what it is. They give it their all, and that's all you can really ask from individuals as a whole when it comes to the Clippers organization. Moving on, obviously, the Suns. You know what I'm saying? Time and time again. What do I got to tell you about them? My boy Devin Booker making moves, showing out for the squad. CP3 just being a true leader and a hooper. Clearly put that mentality in a D book. I don't know if you saw last night, but at some point, I think it was maybe in the second or third quarter, you just saw Devin Booker in a timeout getting the clipboard and just drawing out a play and telling them, yo, let's run the ball through me or whatever the case may be. He really got that from Chris Paul. And so I credit Devin Booker stepping up because he really wanted it, and you could see how much he wanted that win last night. Obviously, Aiden doing what he needed to do to get done and help this team towards the win. But my dog, Jay Crowder, hey, a Miami Heat legend. You know what I'm saying? Go chase the ring that you deserve, baby boy. I appreciate the love, man. You know what I'm saying? I got mad love for Jay Crowder. He stepped up tonight. I think he was shooting like 20-something% from the three-point this series. And then obviously he played lights out last night and dropped 19 and did what the team needed, especially with that leg scratch from Cam Johnson, obviously off the bench, he was a huge impact for them. And they needed somebody to step up and hit the shots that Cam Johnson is, or for that the Suns are used to getting from Cam Johnson. And credit to Jay Crowder for doing absolutely that. Obviously, Monty, I love you, brother. You know what I'm saying? I believed in the Suns last year. What their problem last year was just everything with injuries from Rubio, Baines, DeAndre Ayton getting suspended with PEDs, and then, dealing with his injuries, D-Book getting injured. I swear they could have made a little push, in the postseason last year because they did go 8-0 in the bubble. But it is what it is at that point. We're seeing it now. They're proving the world what's going on. Shout out CP3 in the squad. I got Suns in 6 no matter what team they face, maybe even 4 depending, you know what I'm saying? But like I said, bro, stellar performance from the boys all around. It was a great game from everybody. They contributed where they needed to. Like I mentioned with Cam Johnson being a very late scratch, which I was surprised about. But that series and that game overall was just extremely fun to watch. And, we'll be waiting on the results of this Bucks-Hawks series and see who they will be facing up against in the NBA Finals. Do you got anything else before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, you just mentioned them. Before we get into the preview for that game, I just want to say that, it is a little disappointing because even though, I'm excited for Chris Paul and the Suns, it does suck that we might not be getting a very fully healthy squad out of the East. We're going to either get a Giannis-less Bucks or we're going to get a Hawks team that is young, good, but with a banged-up Trae Young. It's just not what you want. You want the best teams to be in there. So obviously I wish that either one of those teams was healthy. So the finals might be a disappointment in my opinion, which is sad to think about because I think the Suns might just come out and dominate either one of those teams. But that's not going to discredit the Suns at all because guess what? The Suns deserve it. And if they come out and just dominate those teams, it's not what I want to watch. But guess what? It's not their fault. You got to play who you got to play.
Yeah. No, 100%. At the end of the day, injuries are a part of the league. It sucks the amount of injuries that we've had to deal with this season as a whole. We could go from player to player, but it's just, I hate the narrative of everybody saying, this has to have an asterisk next to it. You know what I'm saying? Like the Lakers chip doesn't count. If whoever wins this year shouldn't count because of all the injuries. It's just, listen, bro, it's the most unfortunate case that I think we've ever seen when it comes to NBA history. But at the end of the day, they have to keep going out and play. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. What, do you want the league to just stop because everybody got injured? No, you want to watch basketball. Everybody loves watching the NBA playoffs. That's what we're here for. You know what I'm saying? So it's very unfortunate, but at that point, it is what it is. But let's get into some hot topics and some rapid fire. You know what I'm saying? Some interesting notes that I want to provide to you that I found yesterday. All right. First of all, Mr. Trey Turner becomes the first player in the modern era to hit for the cycle on his birthday. Big ups to him, turning 28 years old. What a delightful gift he got himself. Although he ended up going out with a finger injury shortly after I think he hit that triple. Your thoughts?
Well, yeah, shout out. I mean, anyone that hits the cycle, it deserves to get celebrated. But doing it on your birthday, I mean, I can't imagine what the man's feeling right now. Well, I guess he's got that finger that was injured, but hey, he still hit the cycle before he injured his finger. So shout out goes out to Trey Turner. Trey Turner has been a consistent player in the league for I don't know how many years now. He goes out there and he does his thing. I mean, hitting for the cycle, I don't think people understand how difficult that is to do. I mean, not only that you have to get 4 hits in a game, which is no easy task in the MLB, especially with how pitchers are pitching today. Getting 4 hits in a game is an accomplishment alone. And then for you to get a single, double, triple, and a home run, I mean, shout out goes to him because if you want to look up, I don't remember exactly what the percentage is, but your chance of hitting a triple in the league is not likely. Mm-hmm. Forget about hitting a home run or anything else. Hitting a triple is not likely. And being able to do that all in the same night, huge shout outs goes out to Trey Turner, especially doing it on your birthday. I hope you celebrated like you deserve. That's for sure.
No, 100%. Now, I don't know if you want to talk about it, Blake. I don't know if you want to talk about your Cubs, but they did make some news yesterday.
I know.
Well, the Cubs scored 7 runs in the top of the first inning yesterday and lost 15-7. They are the second team in modern MLB history to score 7+ runs in the first inning and lose by 7+ runs. On April 26th, 1976, the Giants scored 7 in the first inning and also lost 15-7. Your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are how the hell do you do that? Like, seriously, I remember, I mean, seriously, I was at work during this game, so I didn't get to watch it, but I was obviously checking my updates. And I remember because I get notifications when the game starts. So I checked, I'm like, holy, I saw it was like middle of the first and the Cubs were up 7-0. And I'm like, oh my God, they got this game in the bag. I put my phone in my pocket. I go back to work for a couple hours and I check my phone. I get a notification that the Cubs lost 15-7. I'm like, what? I mean, blowing a 7-run lead at any point in the game is a joke, in my opinion. But then to score 7 in the first and not only blow that lead and give up 15, but then to not score another run for the rest of the game. I mean, come on, Cubs. I mean, the Cubs were called the lovable losers for the longest time for a reason. This is just a quick flashback to that. I mean, I love my Cubs, but good Lord. I mean, sure, if you losing any game with having a 7-run game is a joke, but then to lose by more than 7 runs, I mean, come on, guys. I mean, what happened out there? I mean, how do you blow that kind of a lead like that and give up 15 runs? I mean, and not only did they do it to a team in their division, they had to do it to the Milwaukee Brewers, the team I probably like the least. I mean, trust me, I don't really want to talk about it but shout out goes to the Brewers though. You're down 7 runs. You could have easily rolled over and quit, but shout out goes to them for coming out and pulling away that win, scoring 15 runs, shutting the Cubs out 8 innings. I mean, I don't think you realize how difficult that is to do. If your starting pitcher gets rocked like that in the first inning and you're relying on your bullpen for the rest of the game, for the Brewers bullpen not to give up any more runs for the rest of the game, huge shout out goes out to them because that's a huge accomplishment.
No, 1,000%. So I had a stat about Ohtani, and unfortunately, the way that his pitching night went, I kind of didn't want to bring it up. So it's entirely up to you at that point. But I just checking really quick, briefly, a new stat I just didn't even know about. Wednesday night, was the first day in MLB's modern era in which 2 teams, the Cubs and the Yankees, scored 7 runs in the first inning and lost. There had only been 25 total losses by teams that scored 7 runs in the first inning in the modern era entering Wednesday. That's crazy. I had no idea about that. We don't really have to talk about that too much. But while we're on the topic of baseball, I'd love to mention and give a big shout out to Mississippi State winning their first national championship in any sport with a 9-0 victory over Vanderbilt in the College World Series final. Not only, did they get that win and whatnot, but that win alone is the largest shutout in College World Series championship game history. Your thoughts?
Well, yeah, huge shout out. I mean, the fact that Mississippi State, an SEC school, has 0 national championships in any sport blew my mind. Like when you told me that, I think you said something about that a week ago on the show. It blew my mind. I did not expect that a team in a Power 5 conference had 0 national championships. I mean, for the amount of sports that they have at that school, you would have expected them to win at something. But hey, yeah, huge shout out goes to them because Vanderbilt is they're one of the best college baseball teams every single year. You see them in the national championship more often than not. But for Mississippi State to go out there in the winner take all game 3 and then just to shut them out 9-0, they just asserted their dominance out there. I mean, they really showed that they were the better team. They wanted this more. I mean, this meant so much to not only that baseball team, but that entire university. I mean, I bet you Mississippi State, I know it's the summer, but I bet you that campus got live after that game because baseball down south is way different than it is up here, especially for SEC schools. And I bet you they went crazy out in Mississippi State because guess what? Not only are you the national champion winner for baseball, but you can finally say as a Mississippi State fan that, hey, we got one in the sport. We're not winless in championship games. We finally got one. So huge shout out to that baseball team for coming out and showing out for the entire College of Mississippi State.
No, absolutely. Credit to them. Shouts out to them. I didn't even that's a crazy stat to believe with like a 9-0 is the largest margin of victory, in the College World Series championship game. It's absolutely insane. But credit to them for real. We'll move on to the Bucks Hawks preview. But there's a little break, so I can add that the little you know what I mean, the little ad in the middle. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's move on to the last main topic of the day. The Bucks Hawks game 5 is tonight at 8:30 on TNT, with obviously the ruling of Giannis being doubtful, but the good news that he in fact did not have any structural tears or tear in his knee. I think it's a potential good sighting, but at the same time, without him tonight, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, sorry, I didn't. Is Trae Young confirmed to play tonight?
Oh, I have not. Let me check on that while you continue
No,
talking.
exactly. No, yeah. But anyways, I think going back to their last game, the Hawks came out in their last game without Trae Young and dominated the entire game. We said it before, the game was over even before Giannis's injury. But with Giannis's injury, I worry about the other Bucks player just being able to consistently step up with Giannis's absence. I mean, Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday have both been really inconsistent, not only in this series, but the entire playoff so far. And I think that they both have at least one more good game in them. And I think that this series will definitely go to 7 games. But like I said, I just don't believe in the Bucks roster right now to be able to string together 2 more wins in this series. Trae Young is going to have to come back and be at least 75%. And I think the Hawks should be able to win this series. But if he struggles because of the injury, then, I mean, you never know. Much crazier things have happened, and I think the Bucks have a chance with that scenario with Trae Young struggling. But yeah, go ahead.
No, I just was checking up on the injury report. Very interesting news. Obviously, Bogdan, right knee soreness. He's probable to play. I don't think he would sit.
No,
but a new face to the list, Clint Capella, with a right eye inflammation after taking an elbow to the face in that game 4, is questionable. So not only is he questionable, as well as obviously Trae Young with his foot, with his bone bruise, is questionable as well. So if there's a chance that Capella doesn't play tonight, as well as obviously Trae Young, that might just change my entire impact of the result tonight. But, in my eyes, regardless of all of that, I still think dealing with that injury from Giannis, I think is just too much. Like you said, with inconsistency. Chris Middleton is probably one of the most inconsistent players so far in this postseason. You're not getting the love from Drew Holiday, night in, night out. And we're just going to have to see. I think it's going to be similar to the Clippers. Giannis's loss is going to be too big for them to overcome at the end of the day. And I think ultimately the Hawks will take advantage and win. But, with Capella potentially being out, I don't know who could even step in and get those minutes to fill in Capella's role. I mean, Okongwu is going to have to step in big to fill in that role of getting.
Yeah, they're probably going to have to go a little small ball, not entirely small ball, but a little bit.
No, but a little bit, yeah. Obviously, I've had the Hawks winning for the sole reason that I'm not the biggest supporter of the Bucks. But with or without Trae, they just got to come out with the same intensity that they did last game. That team is a live and die by 3 squad. And just shoot to keep the momentum going. If not, then come a bit inside, and we saw their damn middies were going crazy. You know what I'm saying? Hoarder's middies were absolutely disgusting. Bogdan has some little middies on him. Gallinari has some that the midi game was absolutely beautiful last game, as well as obviously hitting crucial threes when they needed it. But as long as they keep shooting and keep hitting the shots that they did, from all cylinders like last game, I see the Hawks winning absolutely, even if Capella does not play. Go ahead.
I don't think that the Hawks, though, can survive and win this series without Trae Young.
Yeah.
I think Trae Young definitely needs to go out and play. Shout out to the Hawks players for coming out and playing phenomenal without Trae Young, but I don't expect them to be able to keep up that sort of performance if Trae Young misses more time. I mean, they went out there, they did their business for one game. Trae Young was able to sit, hopefully heal his foot a lot more, and hopefully he can return for this game, because especially if Clint Capella doesn't play, I don't think the Hawks have a chance if Clint Capella and Trae Young both don't play, even with Giannis's injury. I mean, a fully healthy Hawks team and a Bucks team without Giannis, the Hawks are definitely better, but I don't think it's by too much. I mean, the Bucks still have a very solid roster. They just need to consistently put it together, put up good minutes, and be able to move the ball and get good shots. Because what I've been seeing is Chris Middleton taking some bad shots and just not being able to knock them down. Drew Holiday is just, I mean, offensively, I see him take a lot of one dribble pull up threes where there's maybe one or two passes in the possession. That just cannot happen. When you're missing Giannis, who's an automatic 30 and 10, you got to fill in his role. And you're not going to be able, one person can't fill in Giannis's gap. You're going to have to need multiple role players to be able to fill in those numbers. And I think, like I said, but if Trae Young and Clint Capella are both playing, it's going to be tough for the Bucks to say the least, because the Hawks have been able to beat them when Giannis is playing. So now you take Giannis out of the picture. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I expect the Bucks to win at least one more game in this series. I think it's definitely going to go to 7, but I'm going to have to go with the A in this one. Atlanta, get your party hats ready, because I think you're winning this series. You're going to the finals for the first time in for a long time. And guess what? Trae Young, get healthy. Like I said, if Trae Young's at 75%, they're winning this series. As long as he goes out there, plays average for Trae Young, I expect the Hawks to win this series. No hate on the Bucks, but they're just too inconsistent right now. And without Giannis, those inconsistencies are really going to show. And I think the Hawks are going to take full advantage of that.
No, yeah. I mean, there's not much else to mention about, the only thing that I hope is that I see a fun and entertaining basketball game like I did with the last one. Whether it's the Hawks that come out hot and get that crowd riled up, or the Bucks, especially being at home, getting hot and having their crowd go crazy. Just give me some good playoff basketball. And please, for the love of God, no more injuries, bro. I cannot deal with any more injuries, just watching teams like lose opportunities at getting that chip because of injuries. It's so annoying. It's sad. It hurts my heart. But that's all I can really ask for.
No, yeah. No, I think that perfectly ends it, and I think that brings us into the debate topic for the day. And I guess I'll intro it out for you. We're going to be talking about I think the best playoff series that we have ever watched. So that's not necessarily, so for everyone that's going to jump on us for saying, oh, this isn't the best playoff series, we're not saying of all time. We're saying the best playoff series that we've personally watched. And Sebastian, I don't know if you want to start with your favorite to watch. I'm more than happy to start if you want me to.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so this might get some hate because this is a very underrated playoff series, and people are going to be throwing the bias around. Oh, you're a Bulls fan. This is complete bias. But the best playoff series I've ever witnessed in my life is the 2009 first round series, Chicago Bulls taking on the defending champions, Boston Celtics. Let me give you a few stats into this. This series included 7 overtime periods in 4 different games. 5 games were decided by 3 points or less, and the teams alternated wins from games 3 to 7. And not only that, this was Derrick Rose's rookie year, his playoff debut. And you want to know something that he did in his first game ever? Well, he certainly didn't disappoint. He scored 36 points, which at that point timed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the most points in a playoff debut ever. And not only that, the Bulls stole game 1 at the Garden behind this legendary performance. Now, I know what you're saying. Kevin Garnett did not play in this series, but that did not take away from how great this series really was. Like I said, the Celtics were the defending champions of the league, and then the Bulls were coming off a not good year. They were the 7th seed. They finished 41-41 on the year, very average. I mean, you're 500. That's the definition of average. They came out, though, and gave the Celtics everything they wanted. We saw legendary performance after legendary performance, not only from Bulls players, but from Celtics players as well. I remember game 6, this went into double overtime, I believe. Ray Allen dropped 51 points in this game. This was when Ray Allen was just bucket getter. I mean, he came out and was hitting clutch shot after clutch shot. And for those of you that don't know too many Bulls players, John Salmons and Ben Gordon were the definition of bucket getters. Those two knew how to go out
Mm-hmm.
there, and that's all they did was get buckets. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited just talking about it. Ben Gordon in game 2, they lost by 3 points, but he came out there and dropped 42 points. Ben Gordon was a beast all series. John Salmons was a beast all series. I mean, it's hard to talk about this game without showing clips because let me tell you, I could rewatch this series every day of my life and I will never get bored of it because it was just every game, like I said, was relatively close. There was only one blowout and it happened in game 3. Every other game was decided by under with 3 points or less. I mean, game 1, the Bulls won by 2. Game 2, the Celtics won by 3. Game 3, like I said, was the blowout. The Celtics won by 20. Game 4, Bulls won by 3. Game 5, Celtics won by 2. Game 6, the Bulls won by 1. And then the Celtics finished them off in game 7 and won by 10. But oh my goodness. I mean, this series, I could just, like I said, I could go on and talk about this for days just because you take away not even just how close every game was. I mean, a 7-2 game, a 7 seed versus a 2 seed, usually there are multiple blowouts in that series. The 2 seed, especially a defending champion, they usually come out and win the series in 5, maybe 6 games at max. But the Bulls pushed them to 7. This was the start of Derrick Rose's. I mean, it's sad to think about because the potential that this man had, I mean, it gets talked about the most, what the injuries did to him. But this series alone just showed you what, I mean, a rookie Derrick Rose could do to not only the defending champs, but one of the best defensive teams in the league that year. Rajon Rondo at this point was known as one of the best guard defenders in the league. And Derrick Rose was out here making him look like he had cement on his feet. Nobody, and I mean nobody, not even LeBron James in the 2012 season when he was with the Heat could guard Derrick Rose and his drive. I mean, Derrick Rose was so quick and his crossover was just absolutely filthy. The amount of times in this series I just saw him freeze the defender and just get to the lane and finish a tough shot. I mean, it was almost every single possession for the Bulls. And this series is my favorite, not only because I was a Bulls fan and watched it, but just because every game kind of like left you feeling like what's going to happen next. Because it was, I mean, almost every single game was one shot away from the other team winning. And that alone, I think, is what determines a great playoff series. Not only just close games, but both teams just going at it. I mean, both of these teams were so stacked in a sense. Like, I'll just go over some stats. In this series, Ray Allen and Paul Pierce both averaged 23 points a game. You have Rajon averaging 19 points and 11 assists. You've got baby Glenn Davis averaging 18 points a game. You got Kendrick Perkins, who I hate on him a lot because he just talks to talk too much. But this is back when he was good. He averaged 13 and 11 this series. Then you go to the Bulls. You've got Ben Gordon, my boy. He averaged 24 points a game this series. Derrick Rose as a rookie, averaging 19.7, 6 and 6. I mean, that's unbelievable. And he shot 49%. As a rookie, are you kidding me? Show another rookie in the league doing that. I mean, you just don't see it. Then you've got John Salmons, my guy, like I said, certified bucket. If you don't know the name, look him up because good Lord, this guy went out there, had no fear. He was not afraid to take that final shot. He could, his mid-range, his step back, he had a bag. And because no one talks about John Salmons, but he averaged 18 points per game that series. My man, Captain Kirk, had a good series. He averaged 12 points per game in that series. Joakim Noah was very young also. He averaged 10 and 13, a double-double. I mean, this series just blew my mind. I mean, I remember as a young kid, I remember still being able, like, my mind was blown. I was in Chicago for some of these games. I wasn't in the stadium, but I remember just being in the city and the whole town was going nuts. Every bar, every restaurant was stacked. It was a wait list just to get in to watch these games. And you just don't see that anymore. And almost for any team. I mean, I miss those days where bars were just getting packed. They were excited to watch this game, even for a 2 seed versus 7 seed. You just don't see that anymore. And I think that's why this is not only the best series that I've ever watched, but is arguably one of the best series of all time. Because, I mean, even though it's a first round series, this series just, I mean, was neck and neck every single game. And I mean, like I said, I could talk about it forever. but I'm going to cut myself off here and let you discuss what your favorite series or best series you ever watched was.
See, my original thought when you told me about this was this NBA playoffs like right now. But you mentioning '09, if that's the case, I have no other choice but to mention 2012 Eastern Conference Finals, especially that Game 6 LeBron dropped 45. I mean, that series alone went, what, 7? You know what I'm saying? Game 1, the Heat take it by 14. Game 2, the Heat take by 4. Game 3, the Celtics take it by 10. Game 4, then the Celtics take it by 2. Game 5, they're up 3-2. You know what I'm saying? Win 3 straight. Game 6, when you needed him the most, LeBron James steps up 45 points, 15 rebounds. The man did everything he wanted to do and more to win that game. And then ultimately, obviously, that Game 7 wonderful performance from the team collectively, winning by 13, 101-88, and closing out the Boston Celtics. Now, this series alone, by no means, I don't know what else to tell you, Chief. The man LeBron was on a mission. Clearly, he didn't want to lose. Coming off of that horrible, finals against the Mavericks where they should have won. Coming into that, man, at the end of the day, bro, I think this year was one of LeBron's greatest moments in the sense of his career. I think this is his prime. I think this year, if he would have kept this going for multiple years, I think could have been easily, potentially maybe even taking the reins of the GOAT from Mr. Michael Jordan. But I don't know. There's not really much to talk about other than, he had 33.6 with 11 rebounds, 4 assists. D Wade had 21.4, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. Obviously, CB, 11.7, 7 boards. And obviously, Mario Chalmers being the GOAT that he is, 12 points, 3 rebounds, and 5 assists. I mean, there's not much really else to talk about except that series as a whole, not only for LeBron's legacy, but just, being able to outmatch the Celtics in that big, not even 3, but big 4 that they had over there. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just very impressive and a very crucial playoff series, to say the least. It was definitely one of the most entertaining Eastern Conference Final series that I've ever watched in the time of my life. You know what I'm saying? So maybe it's just me being a biased Miami Heat fan. Maybe me just not wearing this championship, you know what I'm saying, championship shirt. But that's definitely one of my favorite series of all time. Now, just a little quick thing. This year in the NBA playoffs, one of my favorite series probably has to be either the Suns-Lakers one, although, some injuries maybe took some. Actually, scratch all of that. The Hawks-Knicks one or the Hawks-76ers one, for the sole purpose that I was surprised by the outcome of both of those results. That's what
I can agree with that. And also, I know you're kind of saying you're biased, but I know this is kind of supposed to be a debate where we're probably not supposed to agree. But that 2012 series, I completely agree. One of the greatest series of all time, because people tend to forget, if the Celtics beat the Heat that year, the Heat might blow up that entire roster. We never see back-to-back championships from them because guess what? Their first year in 2011, we all know how that went down. The Heat lost to the Dallas Mavericks in the NBA Finals. So if they would have lost that series in 2012, we might have it could have changed the entire league, because guess what? That Celtics team might have lost to the Thunder in 2012, then giving James Harden, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, each a ring. That might keep that team together longer than we expected. So there's a lot of things that series changed for the entirety of the league, because guess what? If the Heat lose, LeBron's probably gone. Chris Bosh and D Wade might have still stayed, because they did even after LeBron left. They might have still stayed. But that team would have definitely blown up after that year. I mean, Eric Spoelstra probably would have been fired. I hate to say it, because he's such a great coach. And during that time, he did not get enough credit for what he did for that team. People used to hate on Eric Spoelstra.
Even LeBron did.
Exactly. LeBron did, They didn't think he was a worthy coach. But that's even more of a shout out to Pat Riley, because guess what? Pat Riley is the only GM / like president of basketball operations that said no to LeBron James. He said, no, Eric Spoelstra is my guy. I know he's going to be good for this team for not only now, but for the future. Guess what? Not many GMs said no to LeBron James. And we saw that in many instances with the Lakers and also with the Cavaliers. But that's why it's a huge shout out goes out to the entire Heat organization, because Eric Spoelstra is a top 5 coach in the league. And I think it's no doubt. And I think, guess what? They lose 2012. Not only did the Heat lose their roster, you lose your coach as well. And who knows what the league would have happened, because where would have Eric Spoelstra went? What would have happened to that Thunder team? I think that you probably weren't thinking about all of that when you were saying it was your favorite series, but it just made me rethink of everything that could have changed in the entire NBA if the Heat would have lost that series.
No, 100%. The only team that I could ever see Eric Spoelstra coach for is the Portland Trail Blazers. I think he goes back at some point because it's always been a passion of his and a goal of his to someday go back to Portland and coach there. At some point, I think we'll see him be a head coach for them. But no, yeah, you're absolutely right. As much as LeBron is the general manager, the coach, the owner of every team that he's ever been a part of, for Pat Riley to say no to a player like LeBron, that's huge. And it shows the faith that he has in his in his I guess you can say successor. So other than that, there's not really much to talk about that series or anything in general. Is there anything that you want to really talk about before we close out?
No, I think we knocked it all out in today's episode for sure.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening, for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, obviously shout out to everybody. Appreciate all the love and the support. We would obviously, appreciate any sort of rating, reviews on Apple or Spotify, as well as, commenting on the YouTube channel. If you guys are watching the YouTube, any feedback we would love and appreciate to help us improve as much as we possibly can. Other than that, where can they find you, Blake?
They can find me at Blake Spillers on Instagram and Twitter.
You guys can find me at RabbitFL on all social medias, as well as follow our Twitter at Unspoken Rule Pod, our Instagram and TikTok, Unspoken Rules Pod. And if you're listening on audio, drop that follow on Spotify or Apple. And if you're watching on YouTube, obviously subscribe to the channel. Other than that, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. It's been your boys over at Unspoken Rules Pod, and we're out.
Yep. Have a good one, guys.